Christmas comes early for fans of the Oklahoma City Thunder as the team reaches a long-term agreement with one of their most important players. Is the De'Aaron Fox era over in Sacramento? I'll ask Matt and Hayes, and we're going to play a game of Rudolph or Reindeer. That's all ahead today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network. We've got Matt Moore. And from the Locked On Bulls podcast, it is Hayes. Matt, Hayes, we got a lot to get to in this show, but the big news out of the weekend was OKC signing Alex Caruso to a 4-year max extension totaling $81.1 million. Let's go to Locked On Thunder host Rylan Stiles for his take on the deal.
The max is what we expect it to be. Obviously, you could always sign for less, but rarely does that ever happen. It comes down to how it's structured, and the Thunder have been very good at structuring contracts. And with Caruso being a team-oriented guy, I would wonder if this is a front-loaded contract similar to Wiggins and Joe, where like their money is at the front end. It de-escalates whenever you're going to have the extensions kick in for Chet and for J-Dub. Like they're going to sign them immediately, this summer, but it's not going to kick in for another year. So like then you have some wiggle room there with this deal. But I think that it just comes down to, if you are going to paint the picture of a Thunder player, it would be Alex Caruso. This is an incredibly selfless guy, an incredibly versatile guy, and I think that the best is still yet to come for him in Oklahoma City.
Okay, what say you, Matt? Is this a good deal by OKC, or did they just lock themselves into a cap hell that they'll be regretting in a few years?
Can he shoot? That's kind of the question here. Like, everyone loves Caruso. He's the exact kind of guy that you want on your team. He does so much stuff. However, like the shooting has gone backwards from last year's 40% mark. And like that's concerning because you need those guys to be able to hit shots. If you want proof of that, just go watch the Cup final. Like you have to be able to knock down open looks. And if Caruso can't, then he's still like a highly useful player, but probably not worth this contract. The other thing I can't believe the history is repeating this way, but I'm just looking down the line. I'm like, well, you're going to want Shea on his deal, and you're going to want Chet Holmgren on a max deal, and then you're going to want James Harden 2.0. I'm going to be very curious to see how this shakes out over the next couple of years with OKC, Hayes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I of course, I love Alex Caruso as a player. You look at what he does defensively. Like teams are averaging 6.3 points less per 100 possessions when he's on the court. 2.3% worse effective field goal shooting percentage. Their turnover percentage for opposing teams goes up 3.5% when he's on the court. So he's definitely impacting the defensive side of the ball. Now, one of the fair questions that people are asking for, the people who are questioning this deal, as of this point in the season, the Thunder are still negative 2.1 points worse when he's on the court as far as overall differential, and 8.4 points worse per 100 points per 100 possessions when he's on the court. So there's legitimate questions to be asked here, but I do think that Alex Caruso is a player I think that three-point shooting is going to come along at some point for him. The question is how long does it stay down? Is he shooting at the right moments when you need it the most, especially in the playoffs? But I think when you look at as a culture setter, as a tone setter on the defensive side of the ball, helping the OKC Thunder get out in transition with that turnover percentage, I just think he's so important to the different looks that they can throw out there on the perimeter defensively that I trust that this deal is going to be looked at as a positive deal in the long run, even though there are some fair questions to be asked about it right now.
I love how it's like they're worse on the court with Alex Caruso. Yeah, and they only beat teams by 10 points per 100 possessions with Caruso on the floor instead of 12. One last thing I just kind of wanted to know in this is I really hope we get a Lakers Thunder series in the playoffs. because Harrison Fagan of SB Nation pointed out that the Lakers offered Alex Caruso $10 million a year for him to play for, quote, visibility and exposure with the Lakers. Really funny how that worked out.
Well, I think anyone who's a freelancer knows how those kind of deals work out. Okay, let's stay out west and talk about Victor Wembanyama. He recorded 30 points and 10 blocks in a win over the Blazers this weekend. He's only the sixth player in NBA history to have a 30-10 points block game. He adds this game to a 50-point game and a 5x5 game that he had earlier in the season. He's one of three players to have that set of games in a season, joining David Robinson, fellow Spur, and Hakeem Olajuwon. Hayes, my question is this. Are you terrified for the rest of the league yet, or do these kind of wild box score lines roll off you until he's piling up playoff wins?
Yeah, I'm not terrified yet. I mean, of course, like, we know that Wemby could do this. He's a unicorn for a reason. He's going to be great for a reason. But I got to see it more consistently. Of course, once Wemby gets into his first playoff series and what he does there, I think things are going to change. The tone's going to change. But the NBA still needs to be worried when you play the Spurs. And if the Spurs do make a move and get Wemby a running mate or anything like that, which has kind of been talked around this trade deadline, of course the NBA should be worried. But right now, I mean, it's a great stat line, and he's going to probably do it a couple of more times in his NBA career, but not terrified yet.
So, I'm a metrics guy. I like the numbers. I like the spreadsheets. I'm a nerd. And what's really funny is, like, when I watch Victor, I'm like, God, like, he's crazy. Like, look how long he is. Like, this is crazy. Look at all these things he can do. But I'm still always kind of like, he's such an incomplete player still. And I'm like, he doesn't even know what he's doing half of the time. Like, you can just tell he still has so much he's trying to figure out. And then you look at the numbers and the impact, and you're just like, this guy fundamentally shapes the game relative to his knowledge base. That, like, it's exponential. When he learns how to play, I don't have a cap on him. I don't know what that looks like. And a lot of it is there's so much potential. It's like, how much of that does he hit? Right? If the potential, like, difference between where he is and where he could be is that wide, does he hit the absolute ceiling? The absolute ceiling has to be the best player of all time. I'm not being crazy here. Like, I don't have any way to contextualize he averages 3.5 blocks as a second-year guy in a league that shoots jump shots. It's ridiculous. So I don't know whether to be terrified, confused, baffled, but whatever it is, he is. There's nothing like him that we've ever seen, and that's incredible.
Hayes, you mentioned finding him a running mate. We're going to talk about that coming up. There's some noise around a possible acquisition that the Spurs could make, some rumors floating around there, so stay tuned for that. But Matt, first I want to ask you how you feel about this. Victor Wembanyama currently the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year at -200 according to FanDuel, but the Spurs have the 19th ranked defense according to Dunks and Threes, 16th if you look at cleaning the glass. Should you win Defensive Player of the Year on a mid-level defense?
No. I'm very strong, confident in this. You can't win MVP if you don't win games. You can't win DPOY if you don't have a great defense. I understand it's like, well, but the guys around him and blah, blah, blah. Your job is to lift them up. If you are the transcendent all-time player, you have to lift them up. And if you don't, that's okay. That doesn't have to be a condemnation of you. Not getting DPOY in your second season doesn't have to be this huge condemnation. Now, I will say, look, when he's on court, they have a 108 defensive rating, 107.6. That's phenomenal. That's incredible. The defense is, like, really there. And if that keeps up over time, he will move into that conversation for DPOY. But I can't give it to a guy whose defense isn't top 5, and I think most voters won't either. It's why him being the favorite to me is ludicrous. I understand the blocks. I understand the steals. I understand how he deters guys from driving. I get all that. Like, he's incredible. You have to make the team elite defensively, and he hasn't done that yet. That's the job.
No, sir. I mean, just for the nature of the conversation, though, let me ask you this, Matt. So I agree with what you laid out here as far as you got to make the defense better. But is there something to be said about where this Spurs team, even though they're not great, where they would be defensively if it wasn't for what Wemby's doing on the court? And that could be what gets him in the conversation.
The answer for me is no, and this is the same thing I apply to MVP conversations, and I care way too much about this stuff, but, like, this is a big deal for me. You can't punish Jaren Jackson for having good defensive teammates. And so you can't reward Victor Wembanyama for having bad ones. Like, all that matters is what happens when you're on the court. Victor doesn't get to control how they look when he's off. He doesn't get to control how bad they are defensively. He has no shape on that, but he does have the shape when they're on the court defensively. And as good as that 107.6 mark is, it's not as good as 103.4 for Jaren Jackson.
It's an interesting conversation. Let us know what you think on the YouTube comment sections, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. Make sure to subscribe, tell a friend. And coming up, we are going to talk about the latest and greatest trade rumors. We've got some stuff from Mark Stein. We've got some stuff from The Athletic to talk about, including Sacramento. Things seem to be falling apart. Is the De'Aaron Fox era almost over? We'll also hear from Locked On Kings. That's coming up. Stay with us. Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Skylight. Are you looking for the perfect holiday gift? Whether you're missing someone this season or just want to give something truly meaningful, Skylight Frame has you covered. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame that brings families closer together. With its seamless sharing feature, you can instantly upload photos from your phone or email, and they appear in seconds, even across the country. It's the easiest way to stay connected with loved ones, no matter where they are. I bought one for my mother-in-law, and she likes me now. That's the greatest endorsement that you could possibly get. Setup takes less than a minute, and the HD resolution makes your memories look stunning. You can even preload the frame with photos before gifting it. That's what I did. So the recipient is surprised with cherished memories right out of the box. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame. Just go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's skylightframe.com/NBA to get $20 off your Skylight frame today. Surprise your loved ones this holiday season with Skylight Frame. Get your mother-in-law on your side. The gift that keeps you close no matter how far apart you are. Skylight Frame. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe and stay up to date with local expert analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. The Sacramento Kings are 4 games under 500. They're 12th in the Western Conference. They've lost 4 games in a row. They have a winning record on the road, but a losing record at home. They are upside down in a season where they were under pressure to prove to star guard De'Aaron Fox that this was a title window worth hanging around for. Locked On Kings host Matt George is wondering if the Fox era is close to being over.
In this situation, just like in the modern NBA, the player has the leverage, the player has the power. Because De'Aaron Fox leaving kills this organization a whole lot more, I think, than the organization walking away from the negotiations with Fox. Other teams are starting to position themselves to potentially be suitors for De'Aaron Fox. The team that was mentioned was the San Antonio Spurs. Makes perfect sense for a number of reasons. Number one reason, De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama. Prime star guard with the guy who many believe is going to be eventually the greatest player in the league and one of the greatest players of all time in Victor Wembanyama. I also wouldn't be surprised at all if the Houston Rockets would be interested in bringing De'Aaron Fox to that squad and joining Ime Udoka and the rising Rockets in Houston and helping take that team to the next level. The Kings right now are the team in the NBA that I think is the most surprising bad team at this point in time. Everybody thought the Kings would be better. And this Kings roster is talented. There are a lot of pieces here in Sacramento that other teams are rightfully going to be looking at. So the Kings are the sick team that separated themselves from the herd, and the vultures are circling.
Okay. Are the Kings dead meat, Hayes? Should they blow it up and try to find a deal to get, or should they blow it up, or should they find a deal to give this De'Aaron Fox era a possible future?
I would lean more towards finding the deal to try to keep De'Aaron Fox here. And the Kings have not been a team that historically has ever really been a big free agent destination. They haven't always drafted the best. De'Aaron Fox is a really good player that they have here in their building, and he plays really good with Sabonis as well. And I would hate to see them have to restart it. And not to blame it all on this move, but again, I have to even question the decision to bring in DeMar DeRozan here even more. There was always some questions about how the fit was going to happen on the court. I'm not blaming him completely for where the Kings are, but it was clear that his style of play did not fit where it felt like that roster was naturally going. And you've had to slow things down and kind of make it make more sense, because DeMar is such a very specific player that, my Bulls had to go through it. Like, you have to accommodate him if you want him to be successful, and you paid him to be successful, so you're going to do it. And I think that it goes back to why it's so important to make sure that the pieces you bring in, how they fit with what you're doing and how they fit with the direction that you're on, because if it doesn't, it can derail everything.
I think it's a better move to just blow up everything except Fox. Like, that to me would be the move. Is I would be like, we are so committed to you, we will move heaven and earth to try to keep you here. Like, we'll do everything to try and get you the help that you need. I like Domantas Sabonis' game. I really do. There's just not a lot of evidence that that's a guy that could be your pillar. And what winds up happening is, like, there's people that are like, well, Domantas is their best player. And I'm always like, that's not true. But that's what it looks like from the outside. And so for Fox, I think you need to be able to placate his ego while also being able to go ahead and give him an opportunity to win more. And so, like, Sabonis should fetch some pretty good return. Like, look at trading Sabonis, look at trading DeRozan, look at trading, as much as I like him as a player, even look at trading Keegan Murray. You have to get outside the box if you want to keep Fox. If you're not going to do that, it's an unfortunate rhyme. If you're not going to do that, you need to be able to go ahead and probably start looking towards what you can get for Fox, because you can get great return if you get ahead of it instead of behind.
We talked a lot about the players. Is Mike Brown the right coach for the situation that the Sacramento Kings are in right now? He's putting a lot of pressure in public, in front of the media, on players, particularly on De'Aaron Fox, in this shaky situation where, he may or may not decide to stay with the team. Is he the right coach for this situation, Matt?
There's a great site called King's Herald that's kind of broken down how he's been as bad as he has been. He had to fight with ownership for a new contract. He got it. I don't know. I go back and forth just because, like, Mike's had a lot of success in this league, but he's also worn out his welcome a lot. And I don't know how to kind of balance those two things. I also just look at this, and I'm with Hayes, and where I'm like, you gave him DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis, and you want him to build a high winning percentage that you can put up a lot of numbers. How do you build a high winning percentage with that combination? I have a hard time blaming Brown for it, but I don't think he's been the solution either.
Yeah, it's a tough needle to thread. Like, Brown is a fine coach, make no mistake about it. He's a solid coach, but I think he's done the best with what he has. Could a different coach kind of get better outcome? Yeah, but I don't think it's the move right now, especially where it doesn't seem like De'Aaron Fox has a bad relationship with their coach, to make a move off that coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So better fit for Fox. You heard the two. The option that's been reported, the rumor that's been reported by Amick of The Athletic, is Spurs, pairing Fox up with Victor Wembanyama. And then you have Matt George there positing a possible Rockets destination. Hayes, what do you feel like is the better fit for De'Aaron Fox if he were to be moved?
Honestly, probably the Spurs. If we're just talking better fit on the basketball court, I would love, and maybe that's just my own personal, like, me getting into my own way of what I'd personally love to see, but pairing De'Aaron Fox with a Wemby, and you still got, like, Sohan if he ends up staying there as well. Like, I don't know. I'm excited about seeing that team together.
Does Fox want to be Robin? Like, does he want to be hidden behind the giant shadow of Victor Wembanyama? Like, that to me is a legitimate question here. And also, I'll say this: like, there's been the reports out there of the meeting between Rich Paul and the Kings is like, well, he wants a winning situation. They always say that, but like, it's like he wants a winning situation, in one of these 4 cities where it's fun to live in as an NBA player. Like, it's never really about the winning. Houston to me is the one. I will tell you this right now. Talking to people around the league, a little bit of this hashtag sources, the slop here. Houston is the one that everybody's looking at because they have so many young assets. Fox is the solution to, all right, Kevin Durant's over the hill, Jimmy Butler's over the hill. That doesn't make sense for them. If they're able to get Fox and they're able to add it to Şengün and Amin Thompson and these other guys, all of a sudden that levels them up in a way that other deals might not. And that's a deal where they don't have to give up as much from a guy like Kevin Durant, a Hall of Famer. So to me, whether it's this summer with free agency or in a trade, the Houston Rockets are the team that I'm going to look at the closest as a possible trade destination.
Okay, coming up, we've got more trade slop, including Kyle Kuzma and more intel on the Jimmy Butler situation in Miami. Plus, we're going to play a game of Rudolph or Reindeer. I've got a Santa hat full of young NBA prospects, and I want to know from Matt and Hayes, are they destined to be a Rudolph, a number one player, or just another Reindeer? That's coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is sponsored by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Plus, you'll gain access to unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. If you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you? Start earning points towards rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait and start earning rewards today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to join in on the excitement of the regular season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a chance to finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's right. Just bet $5, and if you win, you're walking away with $250,000 in bonus bets to play with. I love using FanDuel because they make betting so much fun, from picking which players are going to score touchdowns to guessing total team points. There's always a way to add some thrill to the game, whether it's the big plays or the small moments. FanDuel has you covered. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com, where you can get $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On NBA ahead. Welcome back to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. Maybe it's your first watch every day on YouTube. On Sunday, Mark Stein reported on his Substack that Wizards forward Kyle Kuzma is likely to find a new home at the deadline. Sacramento is mentioned as a potential destination, but it seems like the door has closed on joining up with the Mavericks. Kuzma reportedly did not want to go to Dallas last season when the Wizards had a deal lined up. How eager would you be to add Kuzma if you were a general manager, and which situations make the most sense to you, Matt?
I think that Kuzma is a great buy low candidate, and that we've seen kind of these guys that are on these really bad teams, and you're like, come on. And then they get to a new situation, and it's like, oh, yeah, they're pretty good. Gafford is a good example of this, where like he was a really bad defender with Washington. You put him on Dallas, and all of a sudden he's one of the best rim protectors in the league. Like it's that kind of turnaround I think is important. PJ Washington, sorry, Doug, that is another example of a guy going from like a really bad situation to a good one and developing in a really good way. I think there's probably some value to Kuzma. The question is just like, you got to make sure that you're not giving up that much for him, because he is a bit player. He is a role player. He is like a 4th or 5th starter on a team. He's not going to be the guy, I think, that makes it all come together, but he's a guy that can help you, I think, if you're contending or if you're trying to reach a playoff spot.
Yeah, I like Kuzma in the right situation. I think like he's been on that Washington Wizards team where he's had some ups, he's had some downs, but I think if you bring him to a team that has a system that has a clear and defined role for him, I think that he could play much better in those situations. Like Matt Worthy did great as far as like buy low on him. Like he could pay off for you really well. You just have to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting, and what you're getting in him is what you need, because at this point you kind of know who Kuzma is, and if that's the player that the player type and the skill set that you're looking for, I think he could do really good for a team looking to add something here leading into their playoff run. Mark Stein also reporting that Miami is extremely confident that Jimmy Butler won't be able to leave in free agency this summer, which weirdly sounds like a threat.
Like, I know that I won't have to wish you a happy birthday next year because you will be dead. So yeah, what do you make of that interesting quote there from Mark Stein's report on the Heat's confidence that Jimmy Butler not going to be able to leave?
It's just leveraging. Like, that's all this is that, you know, if you're talking to a team, if they're talking to other teams about a trade, you need to be able to say, like, you can't just get him this summer, because that's going to be the answer for a lot of targets, including, I don't understand this, but the team that is consistently linked to him whenever I talk to people is Brooklyn. It doesn't make sense for Jimmy. It doesn't make sense for the Nets. It makes sense for Big Face Coffee, and that's about it. But like, the Nets are going to be like, we're going to have cap space. Why do we need to give you anything for an extra 6 months? Why do we, like, we'll just sign him this summer. And that debate, I think, is like where this comes from. That's Miami leveraging through the media of, yeah, we're not worried about it. He's not going anywhere. They're going to have to work with us if they're going to want to get a deal done because of the cap restraints and the apron and blah, 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 blah. To me, this is just leveraging through the media.
And that's what Pat Riley is great at, because if you make it, if you push it as if we're not going to help facilitate a signing trade in the offseason, where I think the Nets are like one of the main teams that does have the type of cap space if they did want to sign him outright to help Jimmy Butler out. Like, the Miami Heat are right to play hardball with that, because there are going to be teams that need a little bit of help maybe to get Jimmy Butler in there even as a free agent. But I think that the Heat also have to look at the fact that, yeah, a sign and trade also is beneficial to you, because the last thing I would think that you want is for Jimmy to walk away for nothing. And that is where the Brooklyn Nets come in if they just want to play spoiler, but it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all, really.
It doesn't, but irrational deals and the Miami Heat, they seem to go together around these times. I mean, I would not have put Damian Lillard in Milwaukee until it actually happened, and you know, Miami's was a part of that whole saga. All right, let's play a holiday-themed game to end the show. I'm calling it Rudolph or Reindeer. Just off screen, I have a Santa hat filled with the names of young but unproven players. I'll pull one out, and Matt and Hayes will tell me if they are destined to become a Rudolph, the number one guy on a team, the leader of deer, or just one of the other reindeers. So rummaging. My first name is Amen Thompson of the Houston Rockets. Hayes, is Amen Thompson destined to become, I could really ask this about like 4 or 5 guys on the Rockets, but Amen Thompson, is he destined to become a Rudolph or just another reindeer?
I mean, I think he could definitely be a leader on the team and not just a member of the pack. You look at what he's able to do defensively, and as he grows as a two-way player, he can definitely be the heart of that Houston Rockets team as they keep excelling. So if I had to pick just between the two choices here, I'm going to pick Rudolph.
I'm the guy after Christmas podcasting about the performance and saying, look, I get it. Rudolph was great. But Blitzen was the guy that did the things that helped them deliver Christmas. No one respects Blitzen enough. I think Amen is a Blitzen. I think he's a reindeer. I don't see Amen Thompson because of the shooting. And like, look, there's lots of guys that had shooting issues early and developed and got there. And so it's entirely possible. I'm not going to put limits on him. But from where I see him, I think Amen Thompson could be a second or third best guy on a championship team. That's an incredible player. It's also not a Rudolph, because Rudolph has to hog the spotlight. By the way, Rudolph absolutely signed to Clutch Sports. No question. Rudolph is a Clutch Sports guy.
All right, the Houston Rockets take on the Charlotte Hornets in a rematch of both teams' season openers. So let's go to the Hornets. And Brandon Miller. Matt, is Brandon Miller their second overall selection 2 seasons ago? Is he a Rudolph or a reindeer?
He's a Rudolph. I think that he can be the primary scoring threat. Like, I think that Brandon can really evolve into a 3-level scorer with great efficiency, a guy that the entire team has to account for. Like, there's no reason that Brandon can't develop into a player as good as Devin Booker. Like, I think that the skills are there, and I think he's got better defensive upside. So I'm a buyer on Brandon Miller. I think that he's a Rudolph.
This is a funny enough time where I agree with Matt as far as comparing him to Devin Booker, but I think that Devin Booker also is a reindeer. I think he needed players to come help him, and Chris Paul. Like, my concern, I love Brandon Miller as a player. I love a lot of the Hornets roster. My problem is that Brandon Miller may end up turning into 6'11" Zach LaVine, and that's a legitimate concern that I have there. And so there, I'm gonna pick reindeer.
All right, here's my local expert analysis as host of Locked On Hornets. He can absolutely become a Rudolph, even on a team that features LaMelo Ball, who this season has like historic usage rate numbers. I think those can even out as Miller gets better if he improves his ball handling. Right now, teams, even when LaMelo is healthy, teams are choosing to double Brandon Miller over doubling LaMelo Ball because they know that the pressure gets to him a little bit and he coughs up the basketball. Oh, getting close. Matt is getting close to the camera. That means he has something interesting to say. Hold on. Let's go to the solo shot.
I have a question, Doug.
Okay.
Is LaMelo Ball a Rudolph or a reindeer?
Whoa. Oh, I mean, if you're asking me, can he be the number one guy on a team that's like winning playoff series? I'd have to say I'd question it more than I would Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller is more of the prototype of a Rudolph, like a Jason Tatum or a Paul George, his GOAT. I think like he's more of the prototype of a player that leads a team to playoff series victories than LaMelo Ball, as good as LaMelo Ball is.
Local podcaster destroys LaMelo Ball next on TikTok.
Okay, you know what? You just asked me a question about a player that I love a lot and talk about a lot. Let's talk about a player that you love, Matt, or at least have said you loved on this show, Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks. You said he's the best player on that team. Is he a Rudolph or a reindeer?
I think he's a Rudolph, man. I think he's a guy that you can he does so much good stuff. There's so much good that Jalen Johnson does. And having that versatility, I think, is something that you can really build around. I think that he's a guy that genuinely wants to win. I think he's a guy that does the things that you need to win. And I think he's the kind of teammate that you want to have on your team. So I absolutely think that he's a Rudolph. And the current Rudolph on that team needs to go ahead and take off the red nose and slide on back and take a lesser role there because they would be a lot better off that way.
Wow. Hayes, do you feel the same way?
I feel the exact same way. And every time I watch this kid play, I feel stronger and stronger about it. Like, he is so good. He has so much potential and so much as on both sides of the ball that I just think you have to make him your Rudolph. You have to. If you don't, what are you doing? You would be missing a golden opportunity if you didn't do that, in my opinion.
All right, let us know what you think on YouTube in the comments section, Rudolph or reindeer. We did Amin Thompson, Brandon Miller, Jalen Johnson. I wanted to get to Jalen Williams, but we're out of time. So let us know what you think if you've got some other suggestions for Rudolphs, young players that are destined to be leaders of their team. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts. That includes YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to Hayes. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other, and we're going to see you right back here for a Christmas Day game preview edition of Locked On NBA. That's tomorrow.
Like Monopoly.